everybody. Welcome to another TIBCO Analytics Meetup. I'm Michael O'Connell. I'm here with the TIBCO Data Science team. The topic of today's meetup is Geo Analytics in the cloud. Wanted to remind everybody to make sure they actually join the meetup group. A very, 10 seconds, 5 seconds to join, and then you'll be notified of upcoming meetups when they occur. Excited to have the group up to 500 or so folks. So please tell your friends. The agenda for today's meeting, I'm going to give a little bit of context around our cloud products and cloud initiatives. And then Peter Shaw from the data science team and Arno Varin, the product manager for Geo Analytics, will be going through some Geo Analytic applications in the cloud. And then Helene Snelting from the data science team is going to give an update on the community. You can submit questions at any time during the presentation via the chat option, and we'll answer those or get back to you via email. So as basic setup, what we're doing with analytics and data science in the cloud, the market view we have here and the reason we're investing is that every company is now a data science company. Folks want a quick start to some sophisticated methods, but data is a bottleneck in most analytic applications. So we're paying particular attention to data prep tailored to multiple personas. And then deploying insights to operations is where the extreme value gets generated. And we're providing tooling and methods and templates for robust deployment and rapid iteration. And the reason that data science is so hot is really three factors. The continued explosion of data across all business domains, the evolution and long history of applied statistics and machine learning, and the refactoring of some of those algorithms to distributed cloud-style compute. And then finally, the elastic cloud compute explosion, the big three, but also TIBCO is a big player in providing elastic cloud compute solutions for analytics, and we're going to talk about that today. And we've designed our connected intelligence portfolio to allow you to integrate apps, systems, people, processes, and data, and to do smart stuff with that integrated data. Visual and embedded analytics, streaming and predictive analytics, data intelligence. These are the analytics side of the TIBCO connected intelligence portfolio. And our mission in life is to really help you make an informed action at what we call the moment of truth in a business, whether that's predicting impending equipment failure, managing inventories, optimizing pricing, preventing fraud, providing smart engagement with customers. All of the smart stuff in analytics, if we can apply those things right when it matters, that's when value gets generated. And we typically do that with TIBCO products by turning these systems of record of siloed data into systems of engagement through our connected intelligence portfolio. And we'll show you examples of that today. And we're able to look at data that has come to rest through visual analytics, through predictive analytics, and then apply those insights to data that's in motion to act and monitor on the incoming data. And we do this in a variety of ways. Anywhere and everywhere is a premise or underlying philosophy of our connected intelligence portfolio. Whether we offer our products on premises, as we have done traditionally, in a private cloud, in a public cloud, you'll see examples of how we offer this hybrid capability for our analytics in the cloud. We'll see this today. And we're hard at work building out the TIBCO Connected Intelligence Cloud. We have 5 of our products in the cloud right now: Spotfire, API, Mastery, Messaging, Live Apps, Integration. Each of these products, when you sign up for TIBCO Cloud, has a common set of services. So you can sign up and get a single bill, subscription type monthly bill if you like, or the single sign-on, account management, servicing, underlying structure for governance is all available across the TIBCO Cloud. And these products can be joined together in really novel ways as you connect to data with, say, our data virtualization, our data science product for doing data prep, feature engineering, Spotfire for doing interactive visual analysis, Statistica and Spotfire data science for machine learning and predictive analytics, and then in Streambase and business events for taking new data that's arriving on an event stream and applying insights to that new data. And so the investments we're making in terms of accessing data and doing feature engineering and doing visual analytics that you'll see in focus today. In addition to that, right in the middle here, we allow you to build out models from visual composition interfaces or notebook interfaces inside of our Spotfire data science product against all kinds of data, but particularly big data on distributed systems, and then deploying out those results from those models into either batch or real-time applications to refresh the analytic insights across the fabric of the business operation. So these are the steps involved. And really in focus today is the Spotfire product for doing visual analytics, and the geo part of that can be applied. You'll see geographic analytics as the Geo Analytics piece, or in this particular dashboard, Geo Analytics are being applied to a wafer map in a manufacturing facility. Whatever the geolocation point of reference is, we can apply Geo Analytics to that. Data science for learning and building predictive analytics and machine learning models, and then streaming for taking those models into action. We'll be focusing primarily today on the Spotfire component of this insight to action process. And a couple examples here. So working closely with AWS and Leidos, we have a number of applications up in the CADS private cloud featuring Spotfire data science, working with the CDC to detect disease outbreaks, working with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid on consolidating data around emerging healthcare policies across the United States, and then working with NASA to help figure out the factors that enable an astronauts to spend longer periods of time in space as part of our journey to Mars. So these are all applications in the CADS cloud using Spotfire data science. And then with our partner PerkinElmer, in addition to our own TIBCO cloud, we have a number of Spotfire applications available in the cloud for our pharmaceutical customers and healthcare customers, including the PerkinElmer Signals Medical Review offering, where you can look at combining things like the, for a particular clinical trial, understanding a patient's dosage of medications, any adverse events they might be experiencing, concomitant medications, laboratory results, getting these in a very convenient browsing method in a cloud environment for understanding any risks that you might have for particular drugs that are being brought to market. And TIBCO has a big partnership with AWS for bringing Spotfire and Spotfire data science to the cloud. We just announced the biggest grid computation ever, 1.3 million CPUs running on AWS using EC2 and the TIBCO grid server. We're really pushing AWS to its limits. You can buy Jaspersoft and Spotfire hourly or monthly or yearly, as part of the AWS Quick Start program. So in addition to TIBCO Cloud, we're offering these services through AWS and EC2. So with that as background to the TIBCO investments in the cloud, I'd now like to turn over to Arnaud and Peter to give us talk about the journey of Geo Analytics in the cloud. Arnaud?
Yes, thank you, Peter. Let me share my screen. Okay. Hello, so my name is Arnaud Varin. I am part of the Spotfire project management team. More specifically, I'm responsible for our mapping capabilities or location intelligence capabilities. Well, I'll talk a bit about what Spotfire is bringing for location intelligence, and then my colleague Peter Shaw from our data science team will showcase some Spotfire demos so you can see how to leverage those capabilities in the cloud. Location intelligence, or LI, you probably have heard this term already. I'll try to define it. Well, basically, LI is the idea of taking all your data and adding geographical context to this data to turn that data into insights. LI is the use of location to help you drive insights. In a sense, location intelligence or modern location intelligence can be seen as a new generation GIS that enables you to serve not only the traditional GIS experts, but also the data scientists, the data analysts, business users, and also developers. If you're a data analyst or a business user, what you're expecting for these types of tools is to be able to create maps quickly as a self-service, to get insightful maps in just a few clicks. As a data scientist, you want the same capabilities, but this time you want to build more advanced visualizations or spatial features using your own functions or models applied into your map visualizations. And then if you're a developer, you want to access an open API, well documented, that lets you create easily your custom map applications. With Spotfire, that's what we do. We are trying to serve all those new audience for spatial analytics. Spotfire is basically offering location intelligence for everyone. Could be for the casual user, the data scientist, the analyst, or the developer. So most of the time when we speak about location intelligence at TIBCO, we refer to it as Spotfire Geo Analytics. Spotfire Geo Analytics automates the process of creating maps. In just one click or two, you get a map that you can browse and analyze. But you can create more advanced maps by including different layers of data from different data sources that will give you more context to your data, and that will help you browse the data and find new insights through location. You can bring GIS data and map services to Spotfire, and you can even set your map visualization to be rendered using your preferred coordinate system. So you make sure that you get the same accuracy, the same precision in your map in Spotfire as you get as you're used to have in your more complex GIS tools. Lastly, you can build fully customized visualizations in Spotfire through the use of data functions. Peter will talk about it. Data functions that are shared through TIBCO community, for example, or by using location services that we provide. About location services, we currently have mainly three REST APIs that you can use to do more advanced analysis of your data or more precise analysis of your data. Starting with the geocoding API that offers address level geocoding, reverse geocoding, and address cleansing with a nearly global geographic coverage. Then the routes and distance API, which includes optimizing routes between multiple waypoints. And an API to compute trade areas or catchment areas around the location based on a distance or based on a time to go. Those capabilities or APIs can be used standalone by consuming directly the API through a JavaScript library that you can integrate into your own apps on your own websites, or through different TIBCO products that include Spotfire for location intelligence, Jaspersoft for map reporting, Stream-based live view if you want to get real-time maps, and MDM Clarity if you want to do address cleansing. So we do a lot for you in terms of LI, and if you go to TIBCO community, here you will be able to learn the basics, how to create maps in Spotfire, how to use our services, and you'll be able to learn how to create custom visualizations on top of maps, custom maps visualizations, or custom features related to spatial. I really encourage you to go visit this page. Community.tibco.com. Under the wiki section, we have a big page with lots of information about how to create maps, where to find data functions to do more scripts, to create new visualizations and new features for your maps. So with Spotfire Geo Analytics, what we are trying to do is to bring location intelligence to everyone the easy way, without the learning curve of GIS, which sometimes could be costly for non-experts. But still we want to provide the depth and the analytical capabilities that you need to do predictions and optimizations through locations. Spotfire Geo Analytics is a development focus for us for many years now, and we won't stop. Last estimate from Gartner they estimate 20 billion connected devices by 2020. So as you can imagine, more and more companies are looking to get insight from those data flows. And it is easy to think about the potential of location intelligence with this data for smart cities, connected vehicles, IoT. So we are continually updating Spotfire in that direction to support current and future location intelligence use cases. Basically, every new Spotfire release contains new features related to Geo, and we will continue. Now, I'll give my DM to Peter, who will present some demos of Spotfire Geo in the cloud. Thank you very much.
All right, great, thanks Arnaud. And let me share my screen and flip over to my presentation here. So good, so basically I'll be talking about 3 different topics today. I'll be showing actually 3 different demonstrations. The first one is basically a fairly simple, just a contour visualization, but it's intended to show you how this works in the cloud and how you can simply, download some assets from the exchange that Arnaud just showed and use it in your own applications. The second one is basically purely in the cloud. I'll be just going to the cloud and building out a example completely in the cloud. So if you don't own a copy of Spotfire locally, you can upload your data to the cloud and do some cool stuff there. And then the third one is a more completed analysis of trade areas. I'll be kind of walking through some of the essential components there. So there's actually a couple of data functions written in for R, the R language, with the TER engine, and Spotfire can basically integrate with Spotfire data science, Statistica, there's Python data functions too. So there's a wide range. I'll be showing some TER data functions here today as examples. Good. So the first one is basically going. If you go to our exchange site, figure out where this is. So here's our TIBCO exchange, and this is the public site. If you filter on Spotfire templates, here's the data function I'll be talking about, the map, contour data function that Arnaud just kind of alluded to. So in the way it's been so far, you can download stuff for your website for your own use. What's kind of new now is there's a button you can push to try the cloud version immediately. So you can just say, hey, what does this data function do? So obviously the application here is if you have some point locations on your map that might have some third variable. So you've got X and Y, latitude, longitude, and some other variable Z, which might be some kind of geological parameter. It might be, oil production, might be, some kind of environmental thing, temperature, whatever. This allows you just the colors by themselves. So I turn this off for a second. Just the colors by themselves of the points show kind of a suggestion of patterns. But the reason you use contours is to really try to generalize the patterns you see here. So you're not like looking at the specific point patterns, but you're trying to let the machine algorithms do their work and actually do a smooth surface and actually show you these areas that your eye might kind of miss if you just stare at the points themselves. So, drawing contours is a great way to take a fairly complicated pattern and, not be distracted by the actual locations of the points themselves, but to look at the underlying patterns of the third variable Z, which is hopefully independent of the actual locations there. You're trying to understand how Z varies without being distracted by X and Y. So to actually use this, to go back to the exchange, you can download a component to your own desktop, which I'll show you right here. So here's a local version of Spotfire on my desktop. I've got pretty much the same data, X, Y, and Z loaded up. And I'll start by making a map. So if you look on the data panel over here, I've got latitude and longitude are both collected underneath this location grouping. And what that means is if I go to the panel here, just insert a map chart, it'll know, hey, I know I've got enough information right now to use that to draw a map chart. So there you go. So it's basically using the location information, and it's grabbed another variable here. There's just one left, so it's Z. So Z is being used to change, in this case, the size. All right, so that's your typical starting point. And so what you might want to do, again, to actually implement this contour, I'm going to first actually mark some of these points just to enable me to add some interactivity later on. So I've got the points marked. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually insert the data function that I've downloaded from our TIBCO exchange, right? So you want to use this. This might be your own arbitrary Spotfire file. So all I'll do is I'll go to do it in the insert menu, down to data function, and there's a from file option. And this file right here, the .sfd, the Spotfire function definition file, that's the one I've just downloaded from the website. And I'm all set to go ahead and actually insert this into my Spotfire file. So X I'll use longitude. I'm going to actually be careful to check the marking here. I'm also going to check this refresh automatically checkbox there, just so it refreshes when I mark things. Y is going to be latitude. Make sure I also check the marking box, and Z is just the third column, which is just Z in this case. And smoothing scale is just a number between 0 and 1. It'll just basically type in 0.5 is a pretty good number to use for that. So those are the inputs, pretty easy to use. And then the output is just going to be a new data table. The suggested name is contour lines, which sounds pretty good to me. And you can see down here it's running and it's finished. Nothing has changed on the map because I haven't added it yet. So to add the information to the map, I'm going to close this up actually. To add the information to the map, what I can do, go back to the data panel, and now I can actually see that contour lines as a separate table in the data panel. And just the exact same way as the latitude and longitude were appearing in this location group, I've got this field called geometry. And I can actually just grab this and drag it over into the map, and this little highlight appears on the far right-hand side. If I just drop it in there, it kind of knows what to do. It shows this kind of like light gray lines. So I can go back and obviously edit this, make them nice and thick and colored and so forth. But the upshot is if I just highlight a new area, it'll update those lines, and it's a nice interactive system. I can use it to, I can use it to study the patterns of my data, and I can color code them. I can, obviously you can color code the points on the lines in the same kind of way to see, to understand the patterns. If I save this to my local file, I can go out to the cloud and I can open this up and run this just the same way in the cloud, just as we saw in the exchange. All right, so that's basically it for this part of the demo. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the, I'm actually going to go back to the cloud, and so here I am in the cloud, and I can basically launch my cloud version of Spotfire Analyst. So I'm going to be, in this case, pretending I don't have Spotfire on my desktop. I'm just going to be using the cloud version of Spotfire to upload a file and do some analysis up in the cloud. So, and when it opens up, it says, okay, it's actually got a little library of existing analyses, some sample data and so forth. In this case, I'm just going to actually make a new analysis just from scratch, all right? And when I get this button, it basically says, okay, where do you want to use data from? So there's a lot of different sources of data that are available. In this case, I'm just going to choose the local file. So I can easily upload actually a local file from my desktop. Here it is, actually. So this actually is a file of California census. There's some demographics. Demographics 3 means there's actually 3 demographic variables I've prepared. So I've prepared this data set to match it's actually census tracts in California. So it'll basically it'll let me explore a couple of demographic fields for all the different census tracts, and there's a lot of them, obviously, in California. The census tracts are actually units. It's actually engineered to provide a roughly similar population across all the census tracts. So when you look at the census tract data, it's kind of nice because the numbers of people are roughly the same across census tracts. So you can look at the statistics that way. So, okay, again, I've got a location populated. This is actually the shapefile. Shapefile is right from the US Census group, so you can get that from there. So in the cloud, it's a little bit different. I've got a little different set of menus up here. Here's the one where I want to add a visualization. And in this case, I can just add a map chart. And again, because the location has information there, it knows, oh, this is a shapefile. I'm going to go ahead and draw shapefiles for California, all the census tracts in California. And so I can color code it. I've also got here are my three variables: the age, the median age, the percentage of college education, the median income. And I can actually color code by each of these three things. So if I want to study the broad patterns of variables, and these are, again, this is from the US Census. So the census reports the median age across different census tracts and everything. And you can kind of study this and look for patterns and so forth, and maybe choose a different variable here. You know, maybe the median income, or maybe the you can see it's kind of clustered near the urban areas, and maybe the college education. So there's interesting patterns already, right? So what I would like to do is I like to combine these in a bit more sophisticated way. So I'm going to actually use a TAIR, TIBCO Enterprise Runtime for R, basically it's R script, but it's a TAIR data function. I'm sorry, it's a TAIR expression, even simpler than data function. Just go ahead and use a TAIR expression. And what I can do is, let me actually call out my editor. So here's my TAIR expression. So it's a TAIR integer, a function of, in fact, actually there's some documentation for this. So here's the documentation for how you use this function, this expression, this Spotfire expression language function, which calls out to TAIR, and there's only two arguments. There's a TAIR script, and there's Spotfire column names. It's pretty simple to use. So here's my expression in quotation marks. That's actually the entire R script. So it's a complete R script right there. And it's using the k-means function. It's using three inputs, input 1, 2, and 3. The 4 here is I'm going to ask for 4 clusters, and this just extracts the element there. So because I've asked for 3 inputs, I need to supply 3 Spotfire columns there. Anyway, that's the expression I'm going to use. Now I could, for example, go in here and color this by a custom expression. I could just type that in. If I put the angle brackets in, it'll turn it into a categorical variable. I'm not going to do that, and the reason is I'm going to actually, I want to use it in more than one location. So I'm going to use this in both the map visualization and also some more analysis. So I want to actually insert a calculated column with that expression. Now the way you do this in the cloud version, again, things are a little bit different, is you open up the data panel to see, you know, here's all my different shape files for the different census tracts. And if I scroll to the right, I can see all my information there. But here's my 3 variables here. These are actually all, by the way, these are all standardized to have 0 mean and standard, unit standard deviation. So it's set up to do clustering without having one overpower the rest. So there's a couple of blue elements here. I can add rows or add columns. But in this case, this one is called add calculated column. So if I do that, I'll just paste in my script. It's got some color coding there, which is kind of nice. Call it cluster. And that's basically all there is to do. And when it's finished running, it'll update, and that cluster number will be at the very end there. So here's my cluster, which is actually a string variable, not a numeric, so it'll appear as a category. So here's my cluster number. That's brand new. I've added a column there. And I can go ahead and actually color this by that brand new cluster identifier I just created on the fly. And when I do that, it'll show some interesting clusters there, colors and so forth. And it's funny because every time we do this, there's a random element to this, so it's a little bit different, but the broad patterns are exactly the same. So there's basically a one group of folks lives in kind of rural areas at the coast, maybe. Another group lives in this agricultural area that's Central Valley. There's another group living in the green markings are people who live in the more urban areas and so forth. So you can see some patterns, right? And you can say, okay, there's some interesting stuff going on there. So scoot this around. You want to know, obviously, the next thing you want to know is, okay, so what does this actually mean? And that's why I added the column and not just simply make this a color by cluster. So what I can do is I can take that cluster and do some analysis. What I'm going to do here is actually add a new visualization, make a bar chart to understand better what these clusters actually mean. So I like to basically, this is kind of crazy large here. I want to analyze this both by cluster and by the three variables I've used. So I'm going to start by just getting rid of the cluster over here, and on the y-axis, I'm going to actually select my columns here to include the names of my variables here. So here's my college, age, and income. Those are my three variables. I'm going to add those to the analysis there. Instead of sum, it's going to be best to use the average instead of that. So there we go. And for here, I'm going to actually use the column names. And not very exciting there, but if I color this now by the cluster, this will come together. All right, there you go. So it's almost there, and I need to do one more thing, which is actually add a trellising value. So again, we're working in the cloud with this different set of tools here and everything. I've been able to access the X and Y axes simply by my usual right click and the color by. Now to get to the trellis, it's a bit deeper, so I'm going to have to either right click and get to this properties icon, or I can get to the exact same properties icon up on the toolbar there. In either case, this gives you pretty much all the other stuff you need. Like here's Trellis here, so I can go ahead and put in my rows by cluster, and that should basically allow me to finally see the kind of broad patterns. First thing I'm going to check is that the colors are the same, which they are, which is obviously they are. So this kind of lets me see the broad patterns, right? So again, the colors here, the top group is all the blue areas, which are, again, the blue ones on the map, the green areas are the green ones on the map, and the red ones and so forth. And the three different columns here show the averages for each of these groups here. So the average college education is on the left-hand side here. The green folks have a higher than average, blue folks have a lower than average. The next one over is the age. So the red folks have the oldest folks around. You know, they hang it on the coast, maybe in retirement perhaps, or the rural areas. You know, and then the blue actually have the youngest ages of all. So those are folks in this more agricultural area there. And the green is probably best characterized by their, you know, they have above average college education, a bit older, and they're also they have the highest income of all. So the green areas are the ones where those are the ones where you see them in the more urban environments, and you know, the high tech areas and so forth. And if you scoot around to some of these other areas, you can see the same kind of patterns in other metropolitan areas. So you can really get an overview, both, you know, geographically, and you can also look directly over here and see what's going on in terms of the demographics. Again, this is all public data from the U.S. Census, both the shapefiles and the demographics. But I've built this out completely in the cloud. I simply uploaded one data set, but I've basically created this from scratch in the cloud, which shows you what you can do in the cloud, which is pretty wild, pretty cool. All right, I've got a few minutes left. I'm going to end up with a third example, which is to say, I'm going to the Bay Area, but I look at a example here, which is involving some of the stuff that Arnaud was talking about, involves some of the specific data functions to look at the trade areas and the geofencing kind of stuff. So the hypothesis here is that I've got a series of locations around, in this case, the Bay Area, and I want to perhaps open a new store somewhere, or it might be a new, it might be a new fitness center, or it might be new daycare, or some kind of a, like a dry cleaner. There's a lot of brick and mortar things that are basically still pretty essential, even in today's sort of high tech, point and click kind of world. You still have to go to the brick and mortar thing, like fitness center or swimming pool or whatever, or or a store, grocery store. So you might want to know, here's some locations I can possibly choose from. I've got the same kind of census data available. So what can I use from the census data? Actually, I should show you what I've got here. Open my data panel. I've got things like, the median age, income, percentage of people 18 plus or 65 plus, households with children, households with college graduates. I've got a few things there I can kind of look at. And if I go to my layers and look at the census tract, so I've actually got this wired up to color code this by, in this case, the income, but I got the same exact census tracts available on this presentation as well. Now, I'd like to go the next step to say, okay, this is great, but I want to know, all the people around each of these locations, who is likely to go there, and what are their characteristics. I'd like to kind of merge these two data sets together, right? So one starting point is to say, okay, we have the census tracts, but actually the centers is also available as a separate layer. So each of these little black dots, those are the, they're not the exact centers, but they're a point that is inside each of the polygons. So there's a polygon, and there's these little dots, which is going to be inside there. So I need to find, it basically boils down to which of these little black dots is close to each of these possible store locations. And this is where the Geo Analytics location intelligence, stuff comes in, because we can actually look for the trade areas. And I can just go ahead and turn those on, because these are all pre-computed, right? So I've used the Geo Analytics web service. See if I can bring up information about that. I think it's, oops, it didn't work. There's a, so here's our location analytics helpful web page with some animations and so forth. But on this page, there's descriptions about the TIBCO Geo Analytics and all the different REST APIs and so forth. But this one talks about trade area. This is exactly what I used to find the trade areas. You basically give it parameters like, do you want to define it by distance or by time? What kind of a, how far or how long, driving or walking? So it's again, it's a REST service. So that's basically how that works. If I can get back to my example. So that's what I called to get these polygons to show up. All right, so that's the first little section. The next section, there's actually two data functions here. Just take a look at these. I've got the get driving distances one, and the next one is to actually find which of the census tract locations are inside the trade areas, and that's going to be the points in polygons or the geofencing data function. And these all have their input parameters and so forth. But basically, for the trade areas, I'm asking for a 2 mile driving radius to each of these points. So it basically goes ahead and makes these polygons. I can then tag each of these census tracts with that location. If I turn on my my data panel, open this up. So here's my my data I'm working with, all the different, median age, percentages. These are actually not standardized, so that's the real deal. And then the ID here, this ID is a new column I've created from that geofencing data function I just ran. So that name here, the Berkeley, Oakland, et cetera, those are the names of the store, right? So I basically given it that name. So I now have each of these census tracts with either nothing or a name of a nearby possible store. So at that point, I can go to my analysis page, and I can literally filter by each of those variables, and it'll tell me if I say, let's say I'm going to open up some, high-end jewelry store or something like that. I would look for the income. Let's look for the higher income folks, and this is just the population. So this is the households on the right-hand side and the population on the left-hand side. So I can just see how many people of these characteristics, this income, live within these areas there. And you can kind of slide these around and say, okay, maybe not so much, maybe so much high there. Or you can, just basically kind of adjust this and look for the different characteristics there, right? Or you can say, let's look for the college-educated people, or maybe a median age or something like that. So you can basically tune in your own characteristics and slide them around, and you can see this is your live estimates of how many people with these characteristics are within, in this case, a 2-mile driving distance of each of these locations. And if your store is going to be viable, if it has at least 50,000 or whatever, or 2,000 people or something, within that area of those characteristics, then that would be a good place to open it up. Good. I'm kind of running out of time here. I'm going to jump over to my, if I can find it again, my summary slide. So the summary slide is basically to wrap up. The takeaways are, the takeaways are, the contour visualization, we saw that you can try this out immediately yourself. It uses a tear data function. Other engines are available. You can also download the assets directly and use them yourself. And you can also publish this back to the cloud and use it immediately. The next example we saw was the demographics. It was completely on the cloud. No local Spotfire was needed. I showed the example of using a tear expression to add a new calculated column, which I used in a couple different visualizations. The one I just showed, the trade data analysis, the takeaway there is using the TIBCO Geo Analytics REST service, the trade area, and as well as the geofencing or points and polygons to identify the census tracts. And once you've done that, you've got the identifiers. You can then create your, you're still in Spotfire, right? So you've got all the Spotfire dynamic filtering and stuff. So you can then go ahead and make your own analysis of Spotfire. So good. That's my summary. And Helene, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Peter. Let me share my screen. Yes, so every TIBCO Analytics meetup, we give a bit of an update on the TIBCO community, because part of these TIBCO Analytics meetup is just to share, how to take advantage of all our software and how to make most of it with all the capabilities that are there, and to sort of inspire you to try new and more advanced things with all the features that are available. And we share as much as possible through the TIBCO community. So for those of you who are new to the TIBCO community, it's really easy to sign up. Just takes a couple of minutes, and it's actually the content is accessible to everyone, but once you're registered with an account on the TIBCO community, which everyone can do, you don't even have to own our software to do this. But then you can post questions, you can provide feedback, you can post your own tips and tricks, so you can really interact with the TIBCO community. So the sections that are useful for you are answers, where you can search a lot of questions that have been answered in the past from your peers using Spotfire or other TIBCO software. There are a lot of wiki articles, which I'll show some examples today, that give you great information on all the things you've seen today and in other TIBCO Analytics meetups and webinars. And then the exchange, which is what Arno and Peter showed you earlier, about where you can download some of our examples and templates to have a quick start with some of the capabilities that you've seen. And ideas is a section where you can submit ideas for future product releases, and you'll interact with our product management team directly. You can also vote on ideas that others have submitted already. So quite an interactive community. We still have, I think, about 500 people or so join every month. So this community gets bigger and bigger, and we see a lot of interaction with users and TIBCO experts. So it's also a place where you can download any other software for trials. So, you know, if you're a Spotfire user, but you'd like to try some of our other products, then this is an option to try it out. So you just have to remember community.tibco.com. I would say, you know, if you use Google to search, you're very often directed to TIBCO community article. It's set up that way that you'll find us that way. So that's a good way to remember it as well. So Michael talked about this in the beginning, you know, our general positioning of our full TIBCO Analytics and Connected Intelligence portfolio. So every new release of our, you know, Spotfire, but also Statistica and Spotfire Data Science and Streambase is all geared towards better together and, you know, making sure that all these products work really well together for this connected intelligence experience. And every time that a new version of our software goes GA or is generally available, the new features and examples for our users are published on the TIBCO community. So this is a really good place to go and see what's new in any of our software. And these slides, you know, we'll share with you. So, you know, all the links to these articles to help you sort of remember where to find this will be available to you as well. So we talked about TIBCO Cloud. You know, if you used to be a Spotfire Cloud customer, all our Spotfire Cloud customers have now migrated to TIBCO Cloud, where you have access to all our applications, as Michael explained. If you do have any questions about this and this migration, then please don't hesitate to contact us. But we've also put all the frequently asked questions on the migration on the community, so you can find answers there as well. We also have a very successful webinar series called Dr. Spotfire. Hopefully some of you have attended this in the past, but it's a very much a hands-on session where you can submit any questions that you have on analytic challenges that you're trying to solve. And we pull actually a lot of questions from the community and we change those sort of, or we group those in topics that we then address in the Dr. Spotfire sessions. We also have quite a clever way of you know, recording and making these Dr. Spotfire sessions available as a reference for you with you know, text that is searchable, so that you have really nice summaries to understand the content that you can find in these sessions, and also you can jump right to the section that covers the question that you have. And we've also created some sort of summary resources based on these sessions that help you connect to some, you know, frequently asked questions, some tips and tricks that people really like, and we've put some links in the slide to help you sort of direct to some examples of analyses that people have really enjoyed. So maybe if you start with those, you'll be encouraged to join these Dr. Spotfire sessions as well. There's a lot of information on the TIBCO community and it keeps growing. So for Spotfire, we've also created a customer success center. It's updated frequently and it sort of points you to the latest information that's available to you. So it's just another way of accessing all the information on the TIBCO community. If you're a bit overwhelmed with everything you can find there, then this is a good starting point as a Spotfire user. But what we also use the community for is to share the assets and the presentations that we get from the various events that we do locally. So we do a lot of meetups and TIBCO events that we organize that are, you know, either industry focused or customer focused, or, you know, they may have a specific theme. This is just an example of an energy and IoT day that we organized in London recently. We've done this similar, you know, in other locations, and we had some really excellent customer presentations there. And, you know, if the customers and you are kind enough to share these presentations, then we put those on the community available for everyone. So I really encourage you to look at some of these as well. So the tips and tricks that Arno and Peter shared, specifically Peter in the demos, a lot of these are also shared sort of step by step with examples on the community. So if you want to try this for yourself with your own data set or with a, you know, a sample data set, then you can go to the tips and tricks sections and find examples on how to do this, which is quite useful to try this on your own. And there's a whole section of tips and tricks articles. So there's a page on tips and tricks with lots of methods to, or I guess summaries of methods varying from simple to advanced topics, where you'll find a lot of information for not only to learn yourself, but maybe also to use for lunch and learn sessions that you use internally to share what people are doing with Spotfire or with your analytics tools across the different departments. So we see with a lot of our customers who are successful in building the data science and the analytics teams is when they share in internal sessions. And I think there's a lot of content on the TIBCO community that you can use to create some content to get these sessions started. If you yourself would like to share tips and tricks, then we would really encourage you to do that. We can help you with that as well if you're not familiar with publishing on a community, which is relatively easy, but you just need to do it for the first time, I think. Please get in touch with any of us with your tips and tricks, and we can create the article for you. We'd love for you to share more things. We get in touch with you directly as well if you have good ideas on the ideas portal or on answering one of the questions. So we really encourage you to share with us if you'd like to share one of your articles on the community. And then again, on the exchange, lots of templates that we put up there. Those are more robust and tested in terms of really being made to work with your data. So we really encourage you to look at that. We publish not only templates for Spotfire, but also a combination of products. We recently published some Statistica templates there as well. So a good place to look for examples and inspiration to get started with some of the analysis that we're sharing. And we only we communicate through the community, through our website. We also publish some blogs, the TIBCO blog. We have a specific analytics section on there, and we've recently published a lot of articles on data science and AI. So you can sign up for the blogs and sign up for specific categories that you're interested in, and you'll receive those blogs in your email. And all of these people are actually part of the TIBCO data science team and share either some tips and tricks or some viewpoints on how how data science and AI is developing, and what it is and what it isn't, and some examples of our software, of course, as well. So if you're interested in that, they're short and easy to read, and kind of nice to find in your inbox to be inspired. And then I've also added a link to our resources on our website, which is a really big selection of white papers, webinars, all public information, training that's available for you for free, that you can use to get inspired and learn more as well. So this is all available on our website. These are all recorded webinars and customer stories that are really interesting to read as well. In the past year, the website has changed a lot with very good search capabilities, so it's quite easy to find white papers or data sheets or webinars on a specific topic. And last but certainly not least, TIBCO Now is coming up in September. So our team will be well represented there with presentations, demo booth. It will be a big event with lots of you and customers attending and presenting their stories. Innovation at the edge is the theme. There are a lot of different tracks focusing on industries, focusing on different technologies. We'll cover visualization, cloud, data science, all kinds of topics. It will be very hands-on. You can get certifications, you can get demos. We'll organize industry groups. There'll be a lot of networking. So if you haven't heard about TIBCO Now, please take a look at his website, ask your account team or us for more information, and we'll be delighted to inform you, and you're all invited to attend. So we look forward to seeing lots of you there, and we'll continue to share all the information in the next TIBCO Analytics meetup as well. So that brings us to the end of this TIBCO Analytics meetup with 6 minutes for questions. I've asked Peter to sort of keep an eye on the chats that we've been receiving individually and the Q&A panel to see if anyone has published or submitted any questions to the group. Peter, did we get any questions that any of us could answer?
So there's a question that has come up before with those trade areas, or actually the points and polygons that I thought I would address here. The question is if you have overlapping polygons, right? So if you have two polygons that overlap, you want to know which, points lie within which polygons. How is that dealt with? And, you saw that column. So it creates a column in the original data table with the identifier of the region. And if two polygons are overlapping, there will be two polygons that could possibly be used as the identifier. It doesn't put in both of them, it chooses one, and I haven't tested it around, but I think it's probably, the one that's either first or last or whatever, but there's, it'll be just one. You don't get both of them, there's just one. So if you need to identify the polygons individually, it's probably best to put this into separate little shape files themselves. So there's that. Good.
Yeah, outstanding set of demos, Peter. I was following along and trying to look at the code on the TIBCO docs. The tear expressions was very simple to follow. I couldn't find the Geo Analytics and trade area documentation. Can you give bring that up or give some guidance on those stuff?
Yeah, if you go to the I don't want, if I share my screen, I'll see everything. So if you go to our geolocations webpage, there's that section on the the Geo Analytics that Arno kind of manages, and inside there's some documentation on the trade areas. Currently, there's not a specific data function published yet to do that. There's some documentation on those trade areas right in that REST documentation section I talked about. So we hope to probably publish one shortly. Okay,
gotcha. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick and show that site. So this is the on the wiki here for Spotfire, and going down into the maps area, I guess. And in here is the geo part, Peter.
Yeah, if you go to right there, the TIBCO Geo Analytics, just click on that link in the table of contents, it'll take you there. And then from there, in the REST API section, there's the trade area at the very bottom, right before.
Okay, got it. Okay, perfect.
So it's basically some documentation there for that.
Yeah, so community.tibco.com is the site to go to, and then inside of that, you go to the wiki section, and in Spotfire, and you land on this collection of Spotfire Spotfire docs, including the Geo Analytics or maps site that will get you into the documentation that Peter and Arno covered. Arno, did you have any other comments there? No. Anyway, just awesome demos, guys. Really excited to see the tear expressions working so seamlessly on the cloud with the tear service available through TIBCO Cloud Spotfire. That was impressive. The expressions, the ability to create the clusters and do the regular Spotfire stuff, all there natively from a cloud interface. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. We have actually on that note, we have another question about what do we use the tear expression rather than the built-in k-means feature, and we probably could have used the built-in one. I like the tear. It just gives you a bit more control. I mean, basically, we're showing you a demonstration of basically any arbitrary R scripting expression there. So there's more of a kind of a gateway into here's how you can on the cloud, basically use almost an arbitrary R script and just plug it in there, create your own column there. So it was more about the technique, I think, than the methodology itself. So, but yeah, the built-in k-means certainly has a lot of capabilities too.
Yeah, I think Spotfire. Go ahead, Michael.
The built-in k-means allows you to do clustering across a vector like of lines, whereas what you showed today, Peter, was with the value was a categorical, basically creating a set of clusters that are based on points, and you can do that on a map chart or on a scatter plot the way that you set that up. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you can make a set of categories cluster analysis that returns a set of categories on any Spotfire visualization, whereas the k-means from the menu system is really lined up with line chart, specifically.
Exactly.
Okay, Peter, I think we need to wrap up. We're at the top of the hour. So thanks, Peter and Michael, for answering that question. And just a reminder for everyone, if you're on that Spotfire online user group meetup, you'll receive a notification with the recording of this session, as well as the presentation with all the links of this website and everything else that we showed you today. So thanks a lot, everyone, for attending. We look forward to see you again in September or on any other TIBCO events. And thanks for being part of this. Have a great rest of the day.